It began with silence, not the peaceful kind, but the kind that lingers, thick, weighty, charged, the kind of silence that wraps itself around your chest and makes you question if you're still breathing. That silence lived in our house the day my husband invited his father to move in with us. He said it was temporary just until he adjusts to the city, but some things are never temporary. Mr. Hale was a quiet man, stoic, elegant in the way an old book is, worn but captivating. His eyes carried the shadows of years, and something else I couldn't name at first. I saw it when he looked at me, not with desire, no, with hunger, the kind you hide for so long that it starts to look like loneliness. At night, I could feel his presence even through the walls. He walked softly, but the floor knew his footsteps. He never said a word, but the air shifted when he passed my door. And sometimes, I didn't close it all the way. I told myself it was forgetfulness. But the truth part of me wanted to be seen. In the kitchen, our dance was always innocent. Coffee, eggs, a smile. But our hands reached for the same drawer a few too many times, and sometimes I held on a second too long. He never pulled away. One morning, I saw him in a way no daughter-in-law should. He hadn't locked the door. The steam from his shower drifted like a curtain, half open, through the mist. I saw the sculpture of a man who'd buried his desire for too long. I should have turned away, but I watched, not because I wanted to, because I couldn't not. The guilt came like a storm, fast, loud, crashing. And yet, when he caught my gaze that night across the dinner table, there was understanding, like we were two prisoners sharing the same sentence. The temptation didn't come as a kiss. It came as a whisper, a brush of fingers when handing me a plate, a pause on the stairs, where neither of us moved, a quiet inhale when I passed by in the hallway. We never touched, not really, but the house felt it, the walls. They watched. The day David left for a week-long trip, the silence returned, but this time it pulsed, it called. He stood in my doorway just past dawn. I pretended to sleep, but I heard him, his breath, his steps, his guilt. He left without a word, and yet everything had been said. Later, I stood in front of the mirror, tracing the outline of my own shame, not for what happened, but for what didn't, for what I'd let simmer, for the secret dance we both agreed to without ever speaking. When David returned, he kissed me. He didn't notice the change. He never noticed much, and as I smiled at him, I wondered, can love survive untouched sins? Can a marriage stay pure when the walls have already swallowed the truth? It was past midnight. The world outside had gone still, the kind of stillness that makes even the air feel like it's holding its breath. And then I heard the door, soft, careful, but not unsure. He stood there, at the edge of the room, drenched in darkness and quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't ask for permission. It claims you, with a look. I didn't ask why he came, because I already knew. Some storms don't need thunder to be dangerous, just a single spark. I rose from the chair without a word. My robe clung to my skin thin silk, damp with humidity and anticipation. Each step toward him was a choice, a betrayal, a surrender, a truth I could no longer bury. When our eyes met, the world vanished. There was no guilt, no titles, no husband, just two souls fractured, starved, and too tired to pretend. He raised his hand, not to grab, but to worship. His fingers hovered just above my lips, then trailed down the line of my jaw, my neck, my chest, like a blind man memorizing a shape he'd only imagined in dreams. I let the robe slip, not thrown, not torn, but peeled away slowly, like dusk dissolving into night, the way he looked at me, not like a woman he wanted, but like a miracle he was afraid would disappear if he blinked. When his lips finally touched mine, they didn't claim, they pleaded. Every kiss was an apology he couldn't say out loud. My body didn't resist. It answered arch for arch, breath for breath. We sank into the couch, not in haste, but like silk sinking into water, natural, weightless, inevitable. There were no words, only sound, the rustle of skin against cotton, the crackle of breath, the low hum of restraint breaking apart. He held me like someone holding a confession. I clung to him like a drowning woman clings to a secret. There was no rush, only rhythm, only reverence. The storm inside us didn't explode. It unraveled, slow, precise, beautifully cruel. When it was over, we didn't speak, not because we were ashamed, but because we knew no sentence could survive that kind of truth. He rested his forehead against mine. Our heartbeats slowly returned to silence, but nothing would ever be the same. He dressed without looking at me, picked up his jacket, opened the door, and then he stopped. "Will you be okay?" he asked. I wanted to lie, but I said the truth, I don't know yet. The door closed behind him, and with it the version of myself that used to believe in clean lines and quiet hearts. Now, when David touches me, I shiver, not because of him, but because someone else already lit a fire inside me, and it's still burning beneath my skin. The walls watched everything, but they stayed silent, because some sins don't scream. They whisper, soft, forever. David had returned. His presence filled the house like a familiar scent, comforting, predictable. But this time, I couldn't breathe it in. Something in me had shifted, and something in him was watching. At first night, he didn't say much. He kissed my cheek, held me a little longer, told me I looked tired. I nodded, smiled, lied. He didn't ask about his father, didn't ask about my eyes, how they'd grown darker, didn't ask why the bed sheets no longer smelled like just us. I thought I was safe. I thought the fire had passed, but I forgot ashes still burn. 3 days passed, each more unbearable than the last. I couldn't sleep, not because of guilt, but because of the silence. David was quiet, too quiet. He watched me like someone watching the ocean before a storm, calm, but calculating. Then came the 5th night. He cooked dinner, lit candles, played our wedding song, poured wine into the same glasses we used on our anniversary. I should have known. I should have run. But I sat down, pretending everything was normal, wearing a dress I hadn't touched in months. The one he said made me look dangerous. Maybe I wanted to look dangerous. We barely spoke during the meal, just small bites, fake smiles, and the long, heavy pauses between his questions. Did you miss me? Yes. Was it quiet here? Yes. Did anything happen? A beat? No. He leaned back in his chair. His eyes held mine like a noose. "You're a terrible liar," he said softly. The room fell cold. I felt the air thicken like the moment before glass shatters. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice already breaking. He didn't answer. Instead, he pulled out his phone, tossed it onto the table. The screen was still lit, and there I was in the kitchen, wiping the floor. Bent forward in that robe, smiling, the video ended. I froze. My blood turned to ice. "You think I don't know what's going on in my own house," he said. I stood up, the chair scraping violently behind me. "Where did you get that?" He laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. I synced Dad's tablet to my cloud drive before he moved in. Call it instinct. Or maybe I just knew. You'd give him a reason. I couldn't speak. I wanted to cry, to scream, to vanish. But I stood still, like prey, waiting. "Tell me, Sophie," he said, "did you enjoy it? No, don't lie." His voice cracked like thunder. I flinched. He stood up, walking around the table slowly, like a predator circling the kill. I watched every moment, every glance, every fucking silence between you two. He was behind me now, breathing, burning. I wanted to believe it was just loneliness, that you missed me, that he missed her, that it was innocent. But it wasn't. I turned to face him, tears in my eyes, fire in my throat. "Then why didn't you stop it?" He stared at me, and what he said next shattered everything, because I wanted to see how far you'd go, because I wanted to see how far you'd go. His words hit me harder than a slap. I staggered back. "You watched me?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He didn't blink, didn't flinch. I watched everything. The way you moved when he entered the room, how you dressed, how your laugh changed when he was near. "I didn't plan this," I whispered, my throat tight. "Didn't you?" he said, "because it looked like choreography." He leaned closer, his breath warm, sharp, heavy, with something bitter. Betrayal? Disgust? Maybe desire. You were playing with him, Sophie, and with me, and with yourself. He stepped back. "I thought I married a woman who knew who she was. Turns out, I married a mirror." I gasped. The insult stung not because it was cruel, but because it was true. For weeks, I had become a reflection of desire, bending myself to attention, becoming whatever I needed to be to feel seen. I didn't mean to fall into this. I said, he was lonely. I was lost." David snorted. "No, he was temptation, and you were willing. I wanted to run. But the worst part was, I wasn't sorry, not fully." He walked to the window. "Do you know why I didn't stop it?" he asked again. "I thought I did." I replied. He shook his head. "No, not because I wanted to catch you, not because I'm cruel." He turned back to me, eyes dark as wet earth, "but because I understand." "What do you mean?" I asked. He took a deep breath, and then he said something that undid everything I thought I knew. "Before you, there was someone else." The air collapsed. My knees nearly gave out. "You cheated on me?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "Before we were married, it ended, but it haunted me. I never told you, because I thought I could bury it under love." I couldn't breathe. The betrayal. It was mutual, like two blades pressed against each other, waiting to draw blood. "She was older," he continued, "married, like us now." He smiled bitterly. "I thought I could control it. but you never forget your first sin. I sat down. My legs wouldn't hold me anymore. He joined me on the floor, no longer angry, just tired. We're not innocent, he said. Either of us. I never wanted to hurt you. I whispered. I know, but we did. To each other, just in different ways. Silence returned. Not the heavy kind, not the stalking kind, but the kind that follows confessions, the kind that waits. He looked at me again, and this time I saw it, the boy I once fell in love with, tired, fractured, but still holding out his hand. I don't want to end this. Sophie. My eyes widened. I want to fix it. I blinked. You still want me. After everything, he nodded. I still love you, but I won't lie anymore, and neither will you. We sat in that candle-lit room surrounded by truth, ashes, and the faint smell of something once burned. And I realized something I hadn't dared admit. Desire doesn't always ruin you. Sometimes it reveals what was already broken. I wanted to speak, but words felt clumsy, too small for the weight of what we'd just laid bare. So we sat, two strangers in familiar skin. Outside, the wind whispered against the windows. Inside, the candles flickered, their flames trembling as if they, too, sensed the decision hovering between us. I don't know how to come back from this, I finally said. David didn't answer right away. He stood, walked to the fireplace, placed another log into the dying embers. The flames caught, slowly, reluctantly, just like us. I'm not asking you to come back, he said quietly. Then what are you asking? He turned, to stop pretending we ever left. I blinked. The sentence wasn't an answer. It was a question in disguise, one I didn't know how to answer. He moved toward me, kneeled down, took my hands, his touch still familiar, but no longer simple. Nothing between us was. I still want to fight for this, he whispered, but not if it's just habit. My heart ached, because I wanted the same, but something inside me had cracked, and once you've looked at someone else with that kind of hunger, you can never unsee it. I kissed him, not passionately, not to ignite anything, just to feel what was left. His lips were warm, but something was gone, maybe in him, maybe in me. We spent that night in the same bed, but not like lovers, like two people holding on to memory. He touched my arm gently before sleep. I still believe in us, he said. I'm not sure I do, I replied, and he didn't argue. The next morning, I packed a small bag, not because I was leaving forever, but because I needed to remember who I was without the weight of shared history pressing down on me. David stood at the door, silent. He didn't try to stop me, but his eyes, they begged for something neither of us could name. I looked around once more, the hallway, the staircase, the wall that had once watched too much. Then I whispered, "Don't wait for me, but don't forget me either." And I left. Now, as the train hums beneath me and the city unfolds in reverse, I wonder, is love supposed to survive everything, or does it sometimes ask to be let go? I don't know if I'll go back. I don't know if he'll still be waiting, but I do know this. Some things are broken quietly. Some stories don't end. They just echo, like footsteps in a house that remembers. every sin, every silence, every surrender. And those walls, they're still watching. It began with silence, not the peaceful kind, but the kind that lingers, thick, weighty, charged, the kind of silence that wraps itself around your chest and makes you question if you're still breathing. That silence lived in our house the day my husband invited his father to move in with us. He said it was temporary just until he adjusts to the city, but some things are never temporary. Mr. Hale was a quiet man, stoic, elegant in the way an old book is, worn but captivating. His eyes carried the shadows of years, and something else I couldn't name at first. I saw it when he looked at me, not with desire, no, with hunger, the kind you hide for so long that it starts to look like loneliness. At night, I could feel his presence even through the walls. He walked softly, but the floor knew his footsteps. He never said a word, but the air shifted when he passed my door. And sometimes, I didn't close it all the way. I told myself it was forgetfulness. But the truth part of me wanted to be seen. In the kitchen, our dance was always innocent. Coffee, eggs, a smile. But our hands reached for the same drawer a few too many times, and sometimes I held on a second too long. He never pulled away. One morning, I saw him in a way no daughter-in-law should. He hadn't locked the door. The steam from his shower drifted like a curtain, half open, through the mist. I saw the sculpture of a man who'd buried his desire for too long. I should have turned away, but I watched, not because I wanted to, because I couldn't not. The guilt came like a storm, fast, loud, crashing. And yet, when he caught my gaze that night across the dinner table, there was understanding, like we were two prisoners sharing the same sentence. The temptation didn't come as a kiss. It came as a whisper, a brush of fingers when handing me a plate, a pause on the stairs, where neither of us moved, a quiet inhale when I passed by in the hallway. We never touched, not really, but the house felt it, the walls. They watched. The day David left for a week-long trip, the silence returned, but this time it pulsed, it called. He stood in my doorway just past dawn. I pretended to sleep, but I heard him, his breath, his steps, his guilt. He left without a word, and yet everything had been said. Later, I stood in front of the mirror, tracing the outline of my own shame, not for what happened, but for what didn't, for what I'd let simmer, for the secret dance we both agreed to without ever speaking. When David returned, he kissed me. He didn't notice the change. He never noticed much, and as I smiled at him, I wondered, can love survive untouched sins? Can a marriage stay pure when the walls have already swallowed the truth? It was past midnight. The world outside had gone still, the kind of stillness that makes even the air feel like it's holding its breath. And then I heard the door, soft, careful, but not unsure. He stood there, at the edge of the room, drenched in darkness and quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't ask for permission. It claims you, with a look. I didn't ask why he came, because I already knew. Some storms don't need thunder to be dangerous, just a single spark. I rose from the chair without a word. My robe clung to my skin thin silk, damp with humidity and anticipation. Each step toward him was a choice, a betrayal, a surrender. a truth I could no longer bury. When our eyes met, the world vanished. There was no guilt, no titles, no husband, just two souls fractured, starved, and too tired to pretend. He raised his hand, not to grab, but to worship. His fingers hovered just above my lips, then trailed down the line of my jaw, my neck, my chest, like a blind man memorizing a shape he'd only imagined in dreams. I let the robe slip, not thrown, not torn, but peeled away slowly, like dusk dissolving into night, the way he looked at me, not like a woman he wanted, but like a miracle he was afraid would disappear if he blinked. When his lips finally touched mine, they didn't claim, they pleaded. Every kiss was an apology he couldn't say out loud. My body didn't resist. It answered arch for arch, breath for breath. We sank into the couch, not in haste, but like silk sinking into water, natural, weightless, inevitable. There were no words, only sound, the rustle of skin against cotton, the crackle of breath, the low hum of restraint breaking apart. He held me like someone holding a confession. I clung to him like a drowning woman clings to a secret. There was no rush, only rhythm, only reverence. The storm inside us didn't explode. It unraveled, slow, precise, beautifully cruel. When it was over, we didn't speak, not because we were ashamed, but because we knew no sentence could survive that kind of truth. He rested his forehead against mine. Our heartbeats slowly returned to silence, but nothing would ever be the same. He dressed without looking at me, picked up his jacket, opened the door, and then he stopped. "Will you be okay?" he asked. I wanted to lie, but I said the truth, I don't know yet. The door closed behind him, and with it the version of myself that used to believe in clean lines and quiet hearts. Now, when David touches me, I shiver, not because of him, but because someone else already lit a fire inside me, and it's still burning beneath my skin. The walls watched everything, but they stayed silent, because some sins don't scream. They whisper, soft, forever. David had returned. His presence filled the house like a familiar scent, comforting, predictable. But this time, I couldn't breathe it in. Something in me had shifted, and something in him was watching. At first night, he didn't say much. He kissed my cheek, held me a little longer, told me I looked tired. I nodded, smiled, lied. He didn't ask about his father, didn't ask about my eyes, how they'd grown darker, didn't ask why the bed sheets no longer smelled like just us. I thought I was safe. I thought the fire had passed, but I forgot ashes still burn. 3 days passed, each more unbearable than the last. I couldn't sleep, not because of guilt, but because of the silence. David was quiet, too quiet. He watched me like someone watching the ocean before a storm, calm, but calculating. Then came the 5th night. He cooked dinner, lit candles, played our wedding song, poured wine into the same glasses we used on our anniversary. I should have known. I should have run. But I sat down, pretending everything was normal, wearing a dress I hadn't touched in months. The one he said made me look dangerous. Maybe I wanted to look dangerous. We barely spoke during the meal, just small bites, fake smiles, and the long, heavy pauses between his questions. Did you miss me? Yes. Was it quiet here? Yes. Did anything happen? A beat. No. He leaned back in his chair. His eyes held mine like a noose. "You're a terrible liar," he said softly. The room fell cold. I felt the air thicken like the moment before glass shatters. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice already breaking. He didn't answer. Instead, he pulled out his phone, tossed it onto the table. The screen was still lit, and there I was in the kitchen, wiping the floor. Bent forward in that robe, smiling, the video ended. I froze. My blood turned to ice. "You think I don't know what's going on in my own house," he said. I stood up, the chair scraping violently behind me. "Where did you get that?" He laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. I synced Dad's tablet to my cloud drive before he moved in. Call it instinct. Or maybe I just knew. You'd give him a reason. I couldn't speak. I wanted to cry, to scream, to vanish. But I stood still, like prey, waiting. "Tell me, Sophie," he said, "did you enjoy it? No, don't lie." His voice cracked like thunder. I flinched. He stood up, walking around the table slowly, like a predator circling the kill. I watched every moment, every glance, every fucking silence between you two. He was behind me now, breathing, burning. I wanted to believe it was just loneliness, that you missed me, that he missed her, that it was innocent. But it wasn't. I turned to face him, tears in my eyes, fire in my throat. "Then why didn't you stop it?" He stared at me, and what he said next shattered everything. "Because I wanted to see how far you'd go. Because I wanted to see how far you'd go." His words hit me harder than a slap. I staggered back. "You watched me?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He didn't blink, didn't flinch. I watched everything. The way you moved when he entered the room. How you dressed. How your laugh changed when he was near. "I didn't plan this," I whispered, my throat tight. "Didn't you?" he said, "because it looked like choreography." He leaned closer, his breath warm, sharp, heavy, with something bitter. Betrayal? Disgust? Maybe desire. You were playing with him, Sophie, and with me, and with yourself. He stepped back. "I thought I married a woman who knew who she was. Turns out, I married a mirror." I gasped. The insult stung not because it was cruel, but because it was true. For weeks, I had become a reflection of desire, bending myself to attention, becoming whatever I needed to be to feel seen. I didn't mean to fall into this. I said, he was lonely. I was lost." David snorted. "No, he was temptation. And you were willing. I wanted to run. But the worst part was, I wasn't sorry. Not fully." He walked to the window. "Do you know why I didn't stop it?" he asked again. "I thought I did." I replied. He shook his head. "No, not because I wanted to catch you. Not because I'm cruel." He turned back to me, eyes dark as wet earth. "But because I understand." "What do you mean?" I asked. He took a deep breath, and then he said something that undid everything I thought I knew. "Before you, there was someone else." The air collapsed. My knees nearly gave out. "You cheated on me?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "Before we were married, it ended, but it haunted me. I never told you, because I thought I could bury it under love." I couldn't breathe. The betrayal. It was mutual, like two blades pressed against each other, waiting to draw blood. She was older, He continued, "Married, like us now." He smiled bitterly. "I thought I could control it. But you never forget your first sin." I sat down. My legs wouldn't hold me anymore. He joined me on the floor, no longer angry, just tired. "We're not innocent," he said. "Either of us. I never wanted to hurt you." I whispered. "I know, but we did. To each other, just in different ways." Silence returned. Not the heavy kind, not the stalking kind, but the kind that follows confessions, the kind that waits. He looked at me again, and this time I saw it, the boy I once fell in love with, tired, fractured, but still holding out his hand. "I don't want to end this. Sophie." My eyes widened. "I want to fix it." I blinked. "You still want me. After everything," he nodded. "I still love you, but I won't lie anymore, and neither will you." We sat in that candle-lit room surrounded by truth, ashes, and the faint smell of something once burned. And I realized something I hadn't dared admit. Desire doesn't always ruin you. Sometimes it reveals what was already broken. I wanted to speak, but words felt clumsy, too small for the weight of what we'd just laid bare. So we sat, two strangers in familiar skin. Outside, the wind whispered against the windows. Inside, the candles flickered, their flames trembling as if they, too, sensed the decision hovering between us. "I don't know how to come back from this," I finally said. David didn't answer right away. He stood, walked to the fireplace, placed another log into the dying embers. The flames caught, slowly, reluctantly, just like us. "I'm not asking you to come back," he said quietly. "Then what are you asking?" He turned. "To stop pretending we ever left." I blinked. The sentence wasn't an answer. It was a question in disguise, one I didn't know how to answer. He moved toward me, kneeled down, took my hands, his touch still familiar, but no longer simple. Nothing between us was. "I still want to fight for this," he whispered, "but not if it's just habit." My heart ached, because I wanted the same, but something inside me had cracked, and once you've looked at someone else with that kind of hunger, you can never unsee it. I kissed him, not passionately, not to ignite anything, just to feel what was left. His lips were warm, but something was gone, maybe in him, maybe in me. We spent that night in the same bed, but not like lovers, like two people holding on to memory. He touched my arm gently before sleep. "I still believe in us," he said. "I'm not sure I do," I replied, and he didn't argue. The next morning, I packed a small bag, not because I was leaving forever, but because I needed to remember who I was without the weight of shared history pressing down on me. David stood at the door, silent. He didn't try to stop me, but his eyes, they begged for something neither of us could name. I looked around once more, the hallway, the staircase, the wall that had once watched too much. Then I whispered, "Don't wait for me, but don't forget me either." And I left. Now, as the train hums beneath me and the city unfolds in reverse, I wonder, is love supposed to survive everything, or does it sometimes ask to be let go? I don't know if I'll go back. I don't know if he'll still be waiting, but I do know this. Some things are broken quietly. Some stories don't end, they just echo, like footsteps in a house that remembers every sin, every silence, every surrender. And those walls, they're still watching. Close your eyes. Imagine the scent of old books and burning firewood, the brush of silk across bare skin, and a stranger's eyes deep, unhurried, watching you not for what you show, but for what you try to hide. In a quiet town called Green Hollow, where time drips like honey and silence speaks louder than words, a woman returns to her past, not looking for love, not expecting desire, but it finds her anyway in the gaze of a younger man. With hands like brushes and eyes that see too much, this is not a story of passion rushed. This is a story of wanting slow, aching, and deliciously dangerous. Let yourself fall into it, into the firelight, the hush, and the hunger. This is The Stranger at Green Hollow. The autumn wind curled through the trees of Green Hollow like a forgotten melody. Maple leaves, burned red and gold, danced across the winding road as Clara Duval's car came to a slow stop in front of the house she hadn't seen in over a decade. The house stood quietly at the edge of the hill, watching the valley below like an old widow lost in reverie. Ivy still curled around its porch beams. The shutters hung slightly crooked, and the roof, though solid, bore the gray wear of time and neglect. Clara stepped out into the crisp afternoon, her boots crunching softly on gravel. The air smelled of damp wood and dying leaves, the perfume of endings. She wasn't quite sure what she was seeking here. A place to hide, maybe, or to remember, or perhaps just somewhere she could finally hear her own thoughts, without the noise of a failed marriage echoing in her ears. Inside, the house was just as she remembered and not at all. The furniture was still there, draped in sheets like sleeping ghosts. The scent of lavender and dust lingered in the curtains. Her grandmother's tea set rested quietly behind the glass of the old china cabinet, untouched by time. She paused there a moment, touching the cool porcelain of one cup, a ritual her hands remembered, even if her heart had forgotten why it mattered. Over the next 2 days, she swept, scrubbed, aired out rooms, and spoke not a word to anyone. The local grocery store clerk greeted her with a cautious smile, and she returned it with a nod. Nothing more. Green Hollow was not a place where strangers asked questions, and she was thankful for that. On the 3rd morning, a storm passed through. Branches snapped in the woods, and one of the fence posts by the garden gave way under the weight of the wind. Clara went out after breakfast, armed with a pair of gloves and quiet determination. She had just knelt to examine the damage when a voice cut gently through the stillness. "Need a hand," startled. She turned. A man stood by the edge of her property, one hand tucked into the pocket of his coat. His hair was tousled by the wind, the color of dark coffee, and his eyes steady. Thoughtful met hers without haste or apology. "I live down the lane," he added, saw the storm came through, figured someone might be out here dealing with the aftermath. Clara straightened. The gloves in her hands felt suddenly unnecessary. "I'm managing," she said, then softened. "But, thank you." He smiled, and the lines at the corner of his mouth deepened. "Julian," he offered, stepping closer and extending a hand. "Clara," she replied, shaking it. His touch was warm, calloused, not unkind. The kind of hand used to holding brushes, perhaps, or books, or faces. "You're new?" she asked, partly to fill the space between them. 6 weeks, he said. "Moved in late summer." I teach art at the high school, and that surprised her. He looked too young for such certainty, and yet too grounded to be merely passing through. I didn't know they still taught art, she said, half smiling. Barely, he replied. But I'm stubborn. They spent the next 20 minutes fixing the post. Clara tried not to notice how easily Julian moved, how his forearms flexed beneath the rolled sleeves of his flannel. He smelled faintly of cedar and autumn rain. When they finished, he looked around at the trees. This place, he murmured, it breathes differently. Clara nodded. It holds its breath. Mostly. Their eyes met briefly, deliberately, and then parted again. Thank you for the help, she said. My pleasure, he answered. If you ever want company for tea and quiet. I'm just down the lane, and just like that, he was gone. A shadow moving between trees. That night, Clara sat by the fireplace, journal in her lap, pen unmoving. Words tugged at the edges of her mind like wind at the shutters. She didn't write them down. Not yet, but she knew, in the hollow of her chest, that something had shifted. Something had begun. There was something in the way he looked at her. Clara noticed it first through the window, a passing glance, caught in the reflection of her teacup, Julian, standing in the wild garden with his sketchpad, eyes flickering between the landscape and the outline of her silhouette against the lace curtains. She didn't move, didn't breathe. That moment, delicate and tremulous, stretched thin like spun sugar between them. Later that afternoon, he appeared at her door with a warm loaf of cranberry bread wrapped in parchment. She took it, surprised by her own smile, and invited him in without asking herself why. The house, still cloaked in quiet, seemed to exhale at his presence. They sat in the sunroom, where ivy had crept in through the cracks in the window sill. Julian spoke softly, his voice brushing against the corners of the space like velvet. He asked about her writing. She asked about his painting. Their words were gentle, respectful, but something else moved beneath them. A current, a hum. At one point, he leaned forward to pour more tea, and Clara's gaze fell unintentionally to the veins of his hand, the way his wrist curved as he held the pot steady. She swallowed, then caught his eyes flicking upward, catching hers. There was a flicker there, a knowing. I've been sketching the house, he said, the way the light moves across the upper windows. It's haunting. Lovely, too. Old things often are, she murmured. Would you sit for me, he asked suddenly. She looked up. In the morning, he continued, his voice low and calm. By the window, just like now, the light is perfect, and you have the kind of face painters chase for years. Clara laughed, softly, a breath more than a sound. I'm not young. He tilted his head. That's not what I said. There was no flattery in his voice, only fact. That made it worse or better. Something within her stirred, a heat coiled low in her belly, a pulse beneath her skin. She nodded. Tomorrow, then. The morning arrived cloaked in mist. Clara rose early, brushed her hair slowly, and chose a soft ivory blouse, nothing extravagant. But it fell gently along her collarbones, and the fabric was just sheer enough to whisper the shape of her form beneath. When Julian arrived, he said nothing, but his eyes lingered, longer than before. He set up the easel in the sunroom. She sat in her grandmother's old armchair, one hand resting on her lap, the other curled loosely around a book she didn't intend to read. The silence between them filled the room like warm water enveloping, intimate. He painted without speaking. Occasionally, his gaze would lift to her face, then fall again to the canvas, and each time Clara felt something a tug, a shiver, as if he were not simply observing her, but undressing her through each measured stroke. Minutes stretched, then an hour, then more. Her body began to ache not with discomfort, but with awareness of how she sat, of the slope of her neck, of how the fabric clung to her breasts, the gentle pressure between her thighs as she tried not to shift. She watched him paint, his brow furrowed in concentration, his lips parted slightly, his fingers moved with quiet command, dragging the brush like a lover across skin he could not yet touch. Her breath caught, and she saw him notice. He set the brush down. "I'm finished," he said, though his voice was not steady. Clara rose slowly. The silence was sharp now, charged. He stepped aside so she could see the painting. It wasn't perfect, not in technique, not in proportion, but the way he had captured her, her softness, her restraint, the hint of tension in her hand, the quiet ache in her eyes. It was intimate, in a way that made her chest tighten. She looked at him. He looked at her. The air was thick between them, heavy with everything they hadn't said. "Do you want to stay for lunch?" she asked, her voice low. He nodded. They ate quietly. Slices of warm bread, fig preserves, soft goat cheese, and chilled wine. The food felt like a ceremony. Their fingers brushed once as she passed him a plate. Neither of them moved away. The table was narrow. Their knees nearly touched. At one point, he reached for the wine bottle, and his hand paused just barely on the back of hers. It stayed there longer than it needed to. Her skin sparked beneath his fingers. When he finally left that afternoon, he didn't kiss her, didn't ask for more. But Clara leaned against the closed door for a long time after he was gone. Her eyes shut, heart racing, her body alive. She had not been touched in nearly 2 years, but today she felt as though she had been touched everywhere. It was the first truly cold evening of the season. Outside, the trees stood bare and shivering under the silver weight of dusk. The wind whispered secrets along the eaves. Inside, Clara lit a fire and poured a second glass of red wine. Even before the first was finished, she had told herself she wouldn't invite him, but she did. The message she sent Julian was short. "It's cold tonight. I thought of that bread you brought. Come if you're free." He arrived 20 minutes later, cheeks flushed from the wind, hair damp from a brief drizzle. He carried no umbrella, only a small folded sketchbook under one arm. "I brought you something," he said, his voice deeper in the hush of evening. "A study, from memory." Clara took the book from his hand, their fingers grazing not by accident. Inside, on creamy paper, was a charcoal sketch, her hand resting on a windowsill, light cascading down the wrist, veins etched like roots in fertile soil. Somehow, he had rendered it with such tenderness it almost made her ache. She closed the sketchbook slowly. "You remember the smallest things." Julian smiled faintly. "Sometimes it's the smallest things that linger longest." They ate again by candlelight leftover lentil stew, crusty bread, olives, wine. The space between them was narrower than ever, and quieter. Julian leaned back, eyes flickering toward the fire. "You always keep the lights this low." "Soft light flatters everyone," Clara replied, lips curved. "Not everyone," he said, turning back to her, "but you don't need it." She held his gaze for a moment too long. "Why do you look at me like that?" she asked softly. His answer came slowly, as if the words were being pulled from some place deep. "Because," he said, "you make me feel things I shouldn't say out loud." Her breath caught. She sipped her wine, not for thirst, but for time. Then she rose. "Come," she said, and led him to the sitting room, where the fire glowed gold across the rug and bookshelves. Julian followed without a word. They sat across from one another, legs curled beneath, flames dancing between them like ancient ritual. The room smelled of cedar, cinnamon, and something warmer, more human. "Can I ask you something?" she said, voice nearly a whisper. "Of course. Why me?" Julian leaned forward, forearms resting on his knees. He didn't blink. "Because you listen," he said. "Not just with your ears, with your whole presence. You make silence feel full, sacred, even, and because you carry your beauty like an afterthought, like a thing you forgot you had." Clara's throat tightened. She looked down, but his words lingered, draped across her skin like silk. He moved to sit beside her, slow, careful, but not hesitant. His thigh brushed hers. Her body didn't retreat. Their shoulders touched. Her breath deepened. Julian reached for her hand, not just to hold it, but to explore it, one finger sliding across her palm, tracing the lines like reading a story she had written in flesh. When he spoke again, it was almost a murmur against her temple. "Do you ever think about it?" he asked. "What would happen if we stopped pretending we weren't already thinking it?" Clara turned her face, just slightly enough for her lips to catch the side of his. Their first kiss was not an explosion. It was a revelation. Soft, reverent, and unbearably slow. His mouth was warm and curious, moving with the patience of someone who wanted to savor, not conquer. His hand slipped behind her neck, thumb grazing her jawline. Her own fingers fumbled at the fabric of his shirt, not to undress, but to feel the shape of the man beneath. When they parted, neither of them spoke. They only looked into each other. Not at... The fire cracked softly, its heat pulsing through the room like a second heart. Julian leaned his forehead to hers. "We don't have to do anything, Kaina," he said. "We can just sit, like this." But Clara's hands were already moving slow, deliberate, exploratory. She touched the slope of his neck, the curve of his shoulder, the line of muscle beneath his shirt. Her breaths grew shallower, and so did his. Their bodies began to align, not in a rush, but as if following music no one else could hear. She allowed herself to be drawn onto his lap, her knees astride him, her blouse soft against his chest. Her lips traced the line of his jaw, down to the hollow of his throat. She could feel him wanting, restrained, reverent. When his hands moved, they did so like a sculptor's mapping, learning, memorizing. She whispered his name once. He whispered hers like a prayer. They did not undress fully. There was no need. The firelight bathed them in gold, highlighting skin and size, and every aching pause. In that space between full surrender and restraint, they found something deeper than release, something elemental. When it was over, or rather, when the silence reclaimed the room, they lay tangled on the rug, half-clothed and whole in a way neither had been for years. Clara's cheek pressed to his chest, her palm to his heartbeat. "I didn't plan this," she said. Julian kissed her hair. "I think it planned us," he said. And outside, the first snow of the season began to fall silent, soft, inevitable. Clara woke to the pale hush of snowlight. The fire had long died, but its scent clung to the room: ash, smoke, and something else. Skin, him. Julian lay on the rug, still half draped in his shirt, one arm resting loosely across her waist. His breathing was slow, deep, steady. She watched the rise and fall of his chest and wondered how something so simple could feel like a miracle. Outside, the world had turned white. It hadn't snowed in Green Hollow this early in years. She moved quietly, slipping from beneath his arm, her body aching in unfamiliar places, not from discomfort, but from having been wanted, touched, held. She stood at the window in nothing but the ivory blouse, now creased and open at the neck. Her skin still hummed, her lips still tingled, her thighs pressed together instinctively, holding the remnants of a night she knew would not leave her soon. Behind her, Julian stirred. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Clara turned, and their eyes met in the stillness. He looked at her like someone memorizing a moment he didn't want to forget, like someone who already knew he would have to leave eventually, but couldn't bear the idea of not seeing her again. She walked back to him, slowly, barefoot on the old rug. He reached for her waist as she sank beside him, and she let herself fall into the warmth of his body. Skin against skin, chest to chest, the kind of closeness that didn't ask for anything but presence. "I haven't felt this," she began, then stopped. He kissed the inside of her wrist. "You don't have to explain it." But she wanted to. It wasn't just, she said. He looked at her then, gently brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "I know." And he did. They lay in silence, a different kind of silence this time, not waiting, not yearning, but sated, wrapped in something real. Eventually, Clara rose and padded to the kitchen, started the kettle. The morning smelled of melting snow, warm tea, and yesterday's red wine. Julian joined her, pulling on his flannel shirt, still bare beneath it. The sight of him relaxed, soft-eyed, raw, made something flutter behind her ribs. They didn't speak much over breakfast, just soft glances, soft smiles, and the way their knees brushed beneath the table and stayed that way. But time, as always, crept in. By late morning, Julian stood by the door, coat in hand. "I have classes tomorrow," he said quietly. "And papers to grade." Clara nodded. Neither moved. He stepped forward, brushing his lips across her forehead. "I don't know what this is yet," he said. "But I know it matters." Clara touched his chest lightly. "It does." He lingered, then left. She stood at the window and watched him walk down the lane, his footsteps disappearing into the fresh snow, a ghost made of breath and heat and memory. "That night," she wrote, not just a sentence or a paragraph, but pages. The words came like rain against dry earth, fertile, hungry, alive. She wrote about firelight and skin and stillness, about the way desire could soften a person, about the holy ache of being seen, truly seen by someone who didn't ask you to be anything but what you already were. Her story was not about him, but he was in every line. 2 days later, a package appeared on her porch, no return address, inside a small canvas, a painting, her, by the fire, half in shadow, half in gold, eyes closed, lips parted, not erotic, but not innocent either. "A woman loved by light," on the back, in his handwriting. "I remember everything. J." Clara smiled, pressing the canvas to her chest. She didn't know what came next, but she knew she would never forget this. This man, this night, this beginning disguised as an ending. Sometimes the quietest moments leave the loudest echoes, a touch not finished, a kiss not forgotten, a night that wasn't planned, but somehow changed everything. In Green Hollow, time stood still for just one night, but for her, it was enough to awaken everything she thought she'd buried. If this story stirred something in you, desire, memory, or simply the warmth of being seen, then you're exactly where you need to be. Thank you for listening to The Stranger at Green Hollow. If you want more stories like this, sensual, emotional, unforgettable, don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave a comment below. Tell us, have you ever met someone who made the world stop just by looking at you? There are moments in life when everything shifts. A glance, a touch, a whispered word that changes the course of everything you thought you knew. Elena thought her life was settled, predictable, safe, silent, until Evan came along, not just her son's friend, not just a neighbor, but a spark in the dark, a question she hadn't dared ask. What happens when desire awakens where it shouldn't? When the line between right and wrong blurs beneath the weight of longing tonight? You'll hear a story of temptation, restraint, and the dangerous pull of forbidden flame. Listen closely. Some stories don't let go so easily. Elena sat by the window, her fingers loosely wrapped around the chipped ceramic cup. The tea inside had long since cooled, but she hadn't yet noticed. Outside, the late afternoon sun slanted through the sheer curtains, painting the room with patches of gold and shadow that seemed to shift with the slow ticking of the clock. The house was quiet, too quiet. Her marriage to Matthew had become a landscape of absence. He was always gone, business trips, meetings, dinners with clients. The warmth they once shared had withered into a cold truce, punctuated only by polite nods and hollow words. The space between them felt like a vast canyon, impossible to bridge. Elena traced the rim of the cup with a finger, feeling the familiar ache of loneliness settle deep in her chest. Her thoughts wandered to Jake, her son, now a young man forging his own path at college. He was bright and full of life, but lately, even he seemed to be slipping away into a world she couldn't follow. Her heart ached in ways she didn't want to name. In those moments of silence, Evan's presence was a quiet ripple in her still waters. He was Jake's close friend, tall, with a quiet intensity in his gaze that made Elena both uncomfortable and strangely drawn. There was something about the way he looked at her, not with childish curiosity, but with a kind of measured understanding, as if he saw parts of her she kept hidden that evening. Elena sat on the edge of the living room sofa, the fading light catching strands of her hair like spun gold. Evan was there too, sprawled on the armchair with a sketch pad resting against his knee. She watched him draw, the graceful sweep of his pencil capturing shadows and light, creating something intimate and unseen. The air between them was thick with unsaid words. She felt the weight of his eyes every time they flickered toward her. A warmth blossomed beneath her skin, a spark that made her pulse quicken despite the years of cold nights behind her. Matthew's absence was a dull ache she had long grown accustomed to, but Evan's presence was something new, a whispered promise, a question dangling in the space between longing and fear. As the evening deepened, Elena found herself inching closer, drawn by a force she could neither explain nor resist. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Would you like some tea?" Evan looked up, surprise flickering in his eyes before they softened with a smile. "I'd like that." She poured the tea, hands trembling slightly. Their fingers brushed when she handed him the cup, and a jolt ran through her, sudden, electric, undeniable. They sat in companionable silence, the only sound the faint ticking of the clock and the gentle hum of distant traffic. Elena felt a stirring in her chest, a fragile hope that perhaps, in this quiet moment, something was beginning. Her gaze drifted to Evan's profile, the way the soft light traced the line of his jaw, the slight curve of his lips as he sipped his tea. For a fleeting second, she imagined what it would be like to feel that closeness, that warmth, to be seen not as a mother or a wife, but as a woman again. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. As night fell, the house seemed to hold its breath. Elena wondered if she dared to reach across the space between them to break the silence, to invite the possibility of something more. But for now, she simply sat there, wrapped in the quiet, letting the moment stretch on like a fragile thread of light. Elena's days settled into a rhythm both familiar and unsettling, the quiet hum of the house serving as a backdrop to thoughts she could no longer ignore. Evan's presence became an unspoken current flowing through the spaces she moved in, always near, yet just beyond reach. Every morning, she caught glimpses of him moving about the kitchen, the way his fingers brushed against the rim of a glass, or the light in his eyes as he read from a worn book. These small moments, insignificant on their own, compounded into a slow-burning fire that ignited something long dormant within her. She found herself searching for excuses to be in the same room with him, whether it was to fetch a book Jake had left behind or simply to linger near the living room where he sat, sketching. Elena was drawn to the subtle energy that crackled in the air between them. Their interactions were sparse, cautious a glance here, a half-smile there, but laden with an intensity that neither dared to speak aloud. It was in the way Evan's gaze softened when it met hers, holding her attention in a silent conversation that spoke volumes. One afternoon, as the light filtered through the blinds in golden slats, Elena stood by the window watching Evan sketch. His brow furrowed slightly in concentration, lips pressed in a thin line as his pencil traced delicate lines on paper. She noticed the way the light caught the curve of his jaw and the slight rise of his collarbone beneath his shirt. Her breath caught, and a flush crept up her neck. The realization hit her with startling clarity. She was deeply, irrevocably drawn to him. That evening, Elena chose to wear a soft, flowing dress that whispered against her skin. It was a subtle rebellion against the dullness that had settled into her life, a reminder that she was still a woman, still alive with desire. When Evan arrived to pick up a forgotten book, their eyes met in the hallway. The air between them thickened, charged with an electricity that made her heart race. He paused, voice low and hesitant. "You look different today." She smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her that had nothing to do with the setting sun. "Maybe I'm just tired." Their brief exchange was a delicate dance of words and silence, each phrase loaded with meaning beneath the surface. In the days that followed, Elena found herself more conscious of her movements around Evan, the way she brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, the gentle sway of her hips as she walked, the way her eyes sought his in quiet moments. Evan, too, seemed changed. His usual reserve softened into a tentative boldness. He lingered a little longer when she entered the room, his eyes tracing the lines of her face with an intensity that sent shivers down her spine. One afternoon, as rain pattered softly against the windows, they found themselves alone in the kitchen. Elena was preparing tea when Evan reached out to steady a teapot that threatened to slip from her hands. Their fingers brushed, and the contact was electric. She looked up to meet his eyes, deep pools of warmth and something unspoken. For a heartbeat, the world fell away. Time slowed. The space between them vanished. Evan's voice was a whisper. "Elena, I've wanted to tell you." She held her breath, heart pounding. "Tell me what?" He hesitated, then said, "That you're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen." The confession hung in the air, heavy and intoxicating. Elena felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming flood of emotions she had tried to suppress. I don't know what to say," she murmured. "Then don't say anything," Evan replied gently. "Just let me be here." They stood close, the warmth of their bodies mingling in the small kitchen. Elena's hands trembled as she reached out to touch his cheek, tracing the line of his jaw with a feather-light touch. Their eyes locked, and in that moment, the walls Elena had built around herself began to crumble. The slow, irresistible pull of desire took hold, and for the first time in years, Elena felt alive. The moment Evan stepped into Elena's home that afternoon, the atmosphere shifted thick with unspoken tension. The soft glow of the late sun draping them both in a warm, golden light. The delicate fabric of Elena's dress fluttered slightly in the quiet breeze, revealing just enough to tease the senses, just enough to ignite a fire that had long lain dormant. Their eyes met, and in that instant, something electric sparked between them, a slow, simmering heat that neither dared to name aloud. Evan's gaze lingered with an intensity that was both respectful and hungry, every movement deliberate, every breath measured. "You look beautiful," he murmured, his voice low and husky, as if the words themselves carried the weight of his longing. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. She reached out tentatively, her fingers tracing the curve of his forearm, feeling the taut muscles beneath his skin. His hand remained still, inviting her touch, a silent promise that this moment was theirs alone. Time seemed to slow, the world narrowing to the space between their bodies. Evan's hand moved with exquisite gentleness, sliding from her arm to the delicate hollow of her collarbone. His fingers danced lightly over her skin, sending shivers cascading down her spine. He leaned forward, brushing a feather-soft kiss along the sensitive curve of her neck. Elena's breath hitched, the sensation awakening a cascade of sensations she hadn't felt in years. The kiss deepened, becoming a tender exploration, a language of desire spoken without words. Her hands found their way to his chest, fingers splayed over the warmth beneath his shirt. Evan responded with a soft groan, his own hands moving to cup her face, cradling her with a reverence that both comforted and ignited her. Their lips met again, this time with more urgency, a slow, passionate dance that spoke of hunger and restraint intertwined. Elena felt herself melting into him, her senses overwhelmed by the warmth of his touch, the scent of his skin, the taste of his mouth. Yet, amidst the growing fire, a whisper of hesitation lingered at the edges, a fragile boundary she was not yet ready to cross. "I don't want to rush," she whispered against his lips, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and longing. Evan nodded, his forehead resting gently against hers. "We'll go as slow as you need." In that quiet promise, Elena found a new kind of freedom, the freedom to feel, to want, and to surrender, not in haste, but with intention. The golden afternoon light bathed the room in a honeyed glow as Elena and Evan stood mere inches apart, their breaths mingling in the fragile space between them. the soft rustle of fabric, the faint beating of their hearts, and the almost imperceptible brush of skin on skin filled the room with an electric hum. Elena's fingertips traced the contours of Evan's arm with a trembling reverence, as if committing every line and curve to memory. His muscles flexed beneath her touch, warm and alive, sending ripples of sensation cascading through her own body. She swallowed hard, her throat suddenly dry, her senses heightened to every sound, every movement. Evan's eyes locked onto hers, dark and fathomless, holding a depth of feeling that startled and captivated her. His hand rose slowly, fingers brushing a stray lock of hair from her face, his thumb tracing the soft skin along her cheek. The tenderness of his touch sent a shiver racing down her spine, a delicious mix of vulnerability and power swirling within her. Their lips met again, this time more deliberately, a slow dance of passion and restraint. Elena's body leaned into him, seeking the warmth, the connection she'd craved for so long. The taste of his mouth was intoxicating, a heady mixture of smoke and something softer, sweeter. Her hands tangled in the fabric of his shirt, pulling him closer, anchoring herself to the present moment. But amidst the rising tide of desire, a flicker of hesitation lingered. Elena pressed her forehead against Evan's, her breath mingling with his, in a quiet confession. "I need time," she whispered, her voice fragile yet resolute. Evan's response was a gentle smile, his hand cupping the back of her neck. "Always, Elena, whatever you need." The promise hung between them like a sacred vow, binding them in a silent pact of trust and longing. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the floor, they sank onto the worn rug by the window. Evan's fingers traced lazy patterns along Elena's arm, each touch igniting sparks beneath her skin. The world outside faded away, leaving only the warmth of their shared space, the softness of whispered words, and the quiet symphony of their beating hearts. Elena closed her eyes, surrendering to the moment, letting herself feel the fullness of life pulsing through her veins. She was a woman rediscovering her own desire, her own worth, and in Evan's arms, she found a refuge from the cold emptiness that had haunted her for so long. The evening stretched on, a delicate weave of touch and silence, anticipation and tenderness. Each glance, each brush of skin, each sigh was a note in a song of rebirth, a slow-burning flame that promised more, but demanded patience. As darkness settled, Elena rested her head against Evan's chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. In that sacred quiet, she knew that whatever the future held, this moment, this touch would linger in her memory forever. The twilight settled over the house like a velvet cloak, soft and enveloping, as Elena and Evan found themselves drawn deeper into the night's quiet embrace. The air was thick with the scent of jasmine from the garden, mingling with the faint trace of wine that lingered on their breath. Elena's skin tingled under the dim glow of the table lamp, the fabric of her dress whispering against her thighs as she moved closer to Evan. Their eyes met with a charged intensity that needed no words, a silent understanding that the distance between desire and surrender was shrinking. His hand found hers, fingers intertwining with a gentle urgency. She welcomed the touch, the warmth radiating from his palm spreading through her like wildfire. Slowly, reverently, Evan traced the lines of her fingers, memorizing the shape of her hand as if it were a precious secret. The space between them closed with each heartbeat, Evan's lips brushed the shell of her ear, his voice a low murmur vibrating against her skin. "Elena, you have no idea how long I've waited for this." Her breath hitched, a shiver cascading down her spine as his mouth followed the path of his whispered words, leaving a trail of fire. She felt herself melting into the sensation, the years of loneliness and restraint dissolving in the heat of his presence. Their bodies moved together like a slow-burning dance, every touch a promise, every glance a confession. Elena's hands roamed hesitantly at first, exploring the contours of Evan's back beneath his shirt, feeling the strength that belied his quiet demeanor. He responded with a tenderness that belied the growing hunger in his eyes, his fingers threading through her hair as he pulled her close. Their lips met again, this time deeper, more insistent, an unspoken plea for connection and release. The world outside ceased to exist. There was only the soft sound of their breaths, the gentle rustle of fabric, and the electric charge of skin on skin. Elena's heart pounded fiercely as Evan's hand slipped beneath the edge of her dress, fingers tracing the delicate curve of her waist. She gasped softly, the sensation igniting a blaze of desire that coursed through her veins. The warmth between them grew, an intimate fire that refused to be tamed. Yet, amidst the intensity, a thread of hesitation held her back, a whisper of doubt that balanced the fierce longing. Evan sensed her restraint and paused, his lips brushing a tender kiss along her jawline. "We'll take this as slow as you want," he promised, his voice a soothing balm to her racing heart. Elena nodded, her fingers tightening their hold on his shirt. She was ready to surrender, not to rush, but to feel every moment, every breath, every touch with a newfound awareness and passion. The night stretched on as they explored the boundaries of their desire, weaving a tapestry of touch and whispered promises. With each passing moment, Elena rediscovered the woman she once was, and the woman she longed to become again. As dawn approached, painting the sky with hues of rose and gold, they lay entwined in the soft glow of first light, hearts beating in tandem, bodies sated yet hungry for more. In Evan's arms, Elena found not just passion, but hope, a flickering flame that promised new beginnings amid the ashes of the past. The first light of dawn filtered softly through the curtains, casting a pale glow over the quiet room where Elena lay tangled in the sheets beside Evan. The night had left its imprint warmth lingering on their skin, silent whispers echoing between the spaces where words had fallen away. Elena's eyes fluttered open, heavy with sleep and the weight of new emotions. She traced the curve of Evan's face, memorizing the softness there, the steady rise and fall of his chest beneath her fingertips. A strange mix of joy and fear swirled within her, unspoken and raw. For years, she had lived in the shadows of a loveless marriage, her desires smothered beneath duty and disappointment. But now, in the quiet intimacy of this morning, she glimpsed a truth she had almost forgotten. She was still a woman, capable of passion, longing, and connection. Evan stirred beside her, his hand reaching out to gently clasp hers. His voice was rough with sleep, but tender as he whispered, "Good morning, Elena." She smiled softly, feeling the fragile hope blooming within her heart. Yet beneath that hope lay the tangled threads of guilt and uncertainty. What would Matthew say if he knew? How could she face her son when the boundaries between them had shifted so dangerously? The day stretched ahead, heavy with questions and possibilities. Elena rose quietly, careful not to wake Evan. She wrapped a shawl around her shoulders, the cool morning air brushing against her skin, and allowed herself a moment of reflection. This was a crossroads between the life she had known and the one she might dare to live. When Evan joined her in the kitchen later, their eyes met with unspoken understanding. They didn't speak of the night or the future. Words seemed inadequate to contain the complexity of their feelings. Instead, they shared small moments, coffee brewed with care, laughter over forgotten stories, the simple joy of presence. But the inevitable return of Matthew cast a long shadow over the days that followed, were a delicate dance of secrecy and desire, a balancing act between responsibility and yearning. In stolen glances and fleeting touches, Elena and Evan navigated the labyrinth of their emotions, each step fraught with risk, yet filled. As evening fell once more, Elena found herself alone with her thoughts, the echoes of the night still whispering in her veins. But beneath it all, a fierce truth remained she had reclaimed, and in that reclamation lay the fragile hope of new beginnings. Some choices change everything quietly, irrevocably. Elena's story is not just about desire or temptation. It's about reclaiming a part of herself she thought was lost. In the tangled dance of love and longing, we find the courage to be honest with who we truly are. This isn't a tale of easy answers, but of human truths, of the fragile line between what we want and what we must live with. Thank you for listening. If this story moved you, share your thoughts below, and remember, every heart holds a story worth telling. Until next time, stay curious, stay passionate.
Under the flickering neon lights of the French Quarter, I stand behind the bar, the rich scent of bourbon mingling with the damp, aged wood in the humid air. My name is Elise, 34, manager of a small but upscale restaurant in New Orleans, where fake smiles and expensive wine hide lonely hearts. My marriage to David, a busy lawyer, has long grown cold, like a jazz tune that's lost its melody. Tonight, I just want to do my job. But then his gaze catches mine, a spark igniting in the darkness, burning through every wall I've built. Hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell to join me in this tale of temptation. The bar glows with dim golden light, neon from the French Quarter streets spilling through the glass windows, casting red and blue streaks across the polished wooden floor. A saxophone hums from a corner of the room, smooth as a whisper, blending with the chatter and laughter of patrons. I stand behind the counter, my black dress hugging my frame, brown hair cascading over my shoulders, a few stray strands sticking to my forehead in the summer evening's heat. My hands glide over the reservation list, but my mind drifts, like a boat adrift on the dark Mississippi. David, my husband, is probably at his office, eyes glued to a computer screen, as always. 5 years of marriage, yet I feel like I'm living with a stranger. Silent dinners, half-hearted embraces, and the dreams I once had of a passionate love now just wisps of smoke. I sigh, wiping a wine glass clean, trying to focus. But then the old wooden door creaks open, and he walks in. He's tall, wearing a dark green shirt with sleeves rolled up, revealing tanned, muscular forearms. A gleaming brass saxophone hangs loosely over his shoulder, catching the light like a treasure. His brown eyes are deep, like a midnight lake, both mysterious and inviting. He strides to the bar, sits down, and sets the saxophone on the wooden counter, his fingers brushing it lightly, as if caressing a lover. "A bourbon. Neat," he says, his voice low, like a sustained note. sending a shiver through me. I pour the drink, my hands slightly trembling, striving for professionalism. Musician? I ask, glancing at the saxophone. He smiles, a crooked grin, as if he holds a secret I've yet to uncover. Marcus. He introduces himself, his gaze locking onto mine. And yes, I play, but only when my soul needs to say what words can't. I laugh, masking the flutter in my chest. Sounds romantic, I reply, setting the bourbon before him. But around here, people usually drink to forget, not to speak. He takes a sip, his eyes never leaving me, as if reading every thought in my mind. And you, Elise? He asks, my name rolling off his lips like a soft note. What do you drink to forget? I freeze, startled that he knows my name. Then I remember the name tag on my chest, and I blush. Just a long day, I say, avoiding his gaze, but my voice falters, as if he's touched a hidden corner of my soul. A long day, or a long life, he presses, leaning closer, his breath carrying the scent of bourbon and something wild, like river wind. I don't answer immediately, turning to rearrange bottles on the shelf, but my heart pounds, like drums in a frenzied jazz piece. You don't seem like someone who just lives to pay bills, he continues, his voice a siren call. I see it in your eyes, a fire, waiting to be kindled. I turn back, meeting his gaze, trying to stay composed. Do you talk to every girl at the bar like this? I ask, a hint of mockery, but deep down, I know I'm being drawn in. He laughs, a slow, confident smile. Only the ones who make me want to stop playing music to talk, he says, and my face burns, as if the neon lights are shining on me. Play me something, I say, breaking the tension, but also curious to hear him. Marcus lifts the saxophone, his lips meeting the mouthpiece, and the first notes spill out, smooth and soulful, weaving through my fingers, my heartbeat. The crowd quiets, drawn into the melody, but I only see him, the man with pursed lips, eyes fixed on me, each note played just for me. When the song ends, applause erupts, but Marcus only looks at me, his gaze a promise. What do you think, Elise? He asks, setting the saxophone down, stepping closer to the counter. His breath brushes the space between us, warm as a summer breeze. I think you know how to get attention, I reply, keeping my voice steady, but my heart screams. Meet me after your shift, he says, not a request, but an invitation I can't refuse. I want to show you the real New Orleans. I glance at the clock, nearly midnight. David's probably still at the office, as always. I look at Marcus, feeling like I'm at a dangerous crossroads. I'll think about it, I say, but inside, I know I'm already caught in his gaze, like a boat swept into a storm. The next night, I return to the French Quarter, not for work, but for a yearning I dare not name. New Orleans streets are wet, shimmering under neon lights, as if the city whispers of secrets never to be told. Marcus waits for me under the bar's awning, saxophone in hand, his gaze a flame ready to consume. I know I shouldn't, but my feet move toward him, like waves pulled to the shore, hit like subscribe, and ring the bell to dive into this storm of passion with me. A light rain falls, dampening my brown hair, strands clinging to my cheeks, but I don't care. Marcus stands there, his black shirt clinging to his body from the rain, shirt revealing chiseled lines beneath, like a statue under golden lamplight. You came, Elise, he says, his voice low, like a sustained note, his eyes gliding over my frame, slow, like an invisible caress. I said I'd think about it, he replies, trying to keep my tone playful. But my heart races, like drums in a wild jazz riff. Come with me, he says, offering his hand, fingers rough but warm, as if they've played 1,000 notes to hold their heat. I hesitate, my gaze catching a glint of his wedding ring, but I push it aside, placing my hand in his, feeling warmth spread like a spark on dry grass. Where to, Marcus? I ask, my voice trembling, half curious, half afraid. He smiles, his eyes twinkling like neon on the street. A place where you can forget everything and just feel, he replies, leading me through narrow alleys, bar lights reflecting on wet pavement, painting streaks of red, purple, and a vivid blue canvas, alive. We stop before an old wooden door, hidden behind red curtains in a narrow alley. He pushes it open, and I step inside, into a small studio aglow with golden light from hanging lanterns. Rough brick walls draped with red fabrics smolder like embers. The scent of oil paint, aged wood, and something primal fills the space, as if this room is a world apart, detached from the noisy New Orleans outside. A small wooden table sits in a corner, bearing 2 glasses of red wine and an open bottle. Welcome to where I truly live, Marcus says, setting his saxophone down, his gaze never leaving me. Where music and soul intertwine. I step inside, running fingers over a red fabric, feeling its rough texture. It's beautiful, I murmur, but it feels like a secret. He laughs, a slow, meaningful smile. Sometimes, secrets are what make us feel alive. Elise, don't you think? He pours wine into the glasses, handing me a glass, his eyes an invitation. Sit, he says, gesturing to a deep crimson sofa in a corner. Drink with me, and let's talk about things no one cares about. I sit, glass in hand, the rich, smoky blending with wine scent mingling with the damp air. So, Marcus, I begin, sipping, feeling the wine's warmth slide down my throat. When you're not playing saxophone, what do you do to keep your soul alive? He leans in, his eyes sparkling like light reflected in his glass. I dream, he says, voice low. Dream of untraveled roads, unplayed notes. And you, Elise? What makes your heart sing? I smile faintly, the wine warming my cheeks. I used to dream big, I say, staring at my glass. Opening my own restaurant, a place where people don't just eat, but feel. But then, life happened. My husband, work, bills. I pause, feeling exposed, as if I've bared a hidden truth. Marcus tilts his head, his gaze piercing. You can still dream. Elise, he says. I see it in your eyes, a fire, waiting to blaze again. We talk more about trivial things, the music he loves, Miles Davis, Coltrane, John Coltrane, jazz, the nights he plays until dawn, my secret sketches of restaurant designs in my notebook. The more we speak, I sense the more I feel an uncanny harmony. He understands the weight of being trapped, the yearning for something greater. You're more like me than you think, he says, setting his glass down, stepping closer. We're both chasing a melody to break free. His breath brushes the space between us, warm as desert wind. I set my glass down, my heart pounding, like a drum in a frenzied jazz piece. Marcus, I whisper. What are we doing? He doesn't reply, just pulls me close, his lips meeting mine, devouring me, like 2 parched souls finding each other in a desert. His tongue dances with mine, a wild and dance, fierce, dizzying my mind like a storm's spin. I taste the wine on his lips, sweet and intoxicating, like a note lingering endlessly. His hands glide over my shoulders, slow, like an artist painting tracing a living canvas. He kisses down my neck, trailing neck, his breath scorching, like a flame licking my skin, each touch making me tremble, like parched sand under rain. His lips slide lower, grazing my curves, where my skin pulses taut, like waves swelling under moonlight. His fingers dance there, soft, like playing notes on a saxophone, each touch igniting a trembling melody within me. Elise, he murmurs, voice low like a vow. You're more beautiful than your any song I've ever played. Ever. I lean back against the brick wall, its coolness clashing with his heat. His hands drift lower through my thin dress, touching my deepest secrets, where emotions churn like a hidden spring ready to burst. His fingers move slowly, deftly, like a musician on strings, stirring notes of feeling within me. I feel like a match flaring, hot and slick, like silk under his touch. Marcus, stop, I whisper, my voice frail, almost a plea to continue. Do you really want me to stop? He asks, his eyes ablaze, fingers still grazing, making me quiver like a flame about to erupt. No, I whisper, surrendering to the fire within. I respond, my hands tracing his chest, feeling taut muscle beneath his shirt. I unbutton it slowly, like unveiling a secret. His shirt falls, revealing sun-kissed skin, gleaming under golden light, like a living painting. I tug his belt, metal clinking, his pants sliding down, revealing his fierce strength, like a dragon coiled, ready to blaze. I stroke it, fingers gliding, feeling warmth and life, like touching a living flame. I breathe him in, his scent, bourbon, wood, a hint of wildness, intoxicating me. My lips brush it, kissing softly, then deeply, as if I could consume that fire, as if I could hold it forever. Elise. He groans, voice low like roaring waves. You're driving me mad. He pulls me down to the red rug, his body covering mine, like waves crashing ashore. Let me take you further, he whispers. And I, like a lost boat, let myself be swept into the tide. In the small studio, golden light dances on hanging red fabrics, like embers glowing. I, Elise, kneel on the red rug, my hands and lips lost in Marcus's fire, his fierce strength a living dragon under my touch. The air hums with bourbon, sweat, and life, pulling me into a storm of passion I don't want to escape. But deep in my soul, a voice whispers of this fire's cost. Hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell to plunge into this storm with me. Hanging lanterns cast golden orange streaks, shimmering on rough brick walls, as if the room breathes with us. Scents of oil paint, aged wood, and forgotten wine glasses on a wooden table blend, crafting an intimate yet perilous space. I kneel on the red rug, my thin dress slipping off my shoulder, baring pale skin glistening with sweat. Before me, Marcus stands, his shirt stripped by my hands, pants pooled at his feet, his potent strength a dragon, searing and alive under the light. I look up, my hands still caressing him, slow, like playing a melody on his prized saxophone. My lips glide, kissing deeply, as if to devour that fire. His scent, bourbon, sweat, a wild edge, spinning my senses. My eyes lock on his face. Marcus's eyes shut tight, brows furrowed, lips pressed as if holding back a tempest. A low groan escapes his throat, a sustained note, making my heart race. Elise, he whispers, voice hoarse, you're unraveling me. I smile, a mischievous grin, power surging as I see him tremble under my touch. I continue, lips brushing lightly, then deeper, like a musician playing final notes before the crescendo. Marcus grips my shoulders, fingers digging into flesh, as if anchoring himself. "Elise, enough!" He groans, voice like crashing waves, and he pulls me up, firm yet tender, his eyes blazing, an unquenchable fire. He draws me close, his lips crashing into mine, ravenous. His tongue entwines with mine, a wild dance, dizzying me like a storm. His breath burns, laced with wine and desire, heating my cheeks like a struck match. "Marcus," I murmur between kisses, voice faltering. "We're going too far." He smiles, lips grazing mine, eyes deep as a midnight lake. "How far, Elise? Far enough to feel alive again?" Without waiting, he pushes me onto a small bed in the studio's corner, the mattress creaking under our weight. Golden light bathes his body, highlighting chiseled lines, a living sculpture. He covers me, his body merging with mine, like waves crashing ashore, powerful yet gentle, an ancient rhythm. I feel each motion, slow at first, each pulse like a wave's crash, my eyes closing, my body a dammed stream, pressure building, ready to burst. "Marcus!" I moan, voice trembling, nails digging into his shoulders, clinging to the moment. He quickens, his hips moving in a frenzied dance, pulling me into a vortex of passion. Each motion a note, each touch a spark, my body searing, like a volcano about to erupt. "Elise," he whispers, voice like roaring waves, "you're all I crave." I clutch the mattress, nails sinking into fabric, feeling the dam about to break. Then it comes, like waves shattering, sweeping me into a storm of ecstasy. I tremble, my body melting, like a shore battered by waves, slick and searing. He follows, breaths ragged, blending with a low groan. Both of us like rivers merging, dissolving in the studio's golden light. But as I lie there, breath heavy, his phone flashes on the wooden floor, near scattered clothes. A message glows. "Marcus, our son's asking where you are." My heart stops. I push him away, sitting up, guilt crashing like a cold wave. "You have a son?" I whisper, voice shaking, eyes fixed on the screen. Marcus bows his head, silent, eyes full of regret. "Elise, I can explain," he says, voice rough, but I'm already standing, grabbing my dress, heart pounding. "Explain what, Marcus? That you have a family?" I nearly shout, tears streaming down my cheeks. I flee the studio, rain pouring outside, soaking my clothes, but it can't wash away the guilt. New Orleans streets lose their charm. Neon streaks now just fragments of a shattered dream. I walk on, leaving behind the fire that would consume me if I stayed. Yet deep inside, I sense another storm brewing. One I can't escape. New Orleans streets now seem a bleak painting, rain pouring, soaking me, but unable to tear down the wall of guilt crushing my heart. I, Elise, fell into temptation, ignoring the wedding ring glinting on Marcus's hand, ignoring my vows to David, my husband. Back in my apartment, I stand before the mirror, staring at a woman with red-rimmed eyes, wondering who I've become. But this wall isn't just guilt. It's a warning, a threat from the woman who knows my secrets. My apartment is shrouded in darkness, only a table lamp casting light on white walls, shadows dancing like relentless memories. The smell of cold coffee from a mug blends with damp air seeping through a cracked window. I sit on the sofa, my wet dress clinging to my skin, hair tangled, strands sticking to my cheeks, like ropes tying me to the studio. Images of Marcus flood my mind, his eyes shut as I kissed him, his low groan as we merged, and the chilling message. Our son's asking where you are. I grip my phone, fingers trembling, wanting to erase him, but it buzzes, a message from Marcus. Elise, I need to explain. Meet me, please. I don't reply, swiping to delete the message, but my heart races, like drums in an uncontrolled jazz piece. Then the phone buzzes again, an unknown number. I hesitate, breath heavy, then answer. A cold female voice cuts through, sharp as a blade. I'm Marcus's wife. I saw you at the bar last night. Elise, we need to talk. My heart plummets, breath catching, as if the room's air is drained. Today, the park near your place, 10 a.m., she says, voice icy, then hangs up. I sit frozen, mind reeling, recalling last night. Marcus's gaze, neon lights through the bar's windows, and a fleeting figure outside, a blonde woman, eyes sharp, but I was too lost in Marcus's smile to notice. She'd been watching, perhaps seeing me leave with him, slipping into the alley to the studio. Worse, she checked Marcus's phone, finding his messages to me. Elise, I can't stop thinking about you. A photo he took of me at the bar, hair loose under the lights, was there too. Guilt surges, a cold wave, making me shiver. That night, I don't sleep. I stand by the window, watching rain pour, drops sliding down the glass like tears I can't shed. Marcus's image haunts me, his fingers tracing my body, his groan as we merged, the wedding ring I ignored. I press my forehead to the cold glass, whispering, Elise, what have you done? Each raindrop is a reminder, a hammer striking the wall of guilt I've built. The next morning, the rain stops, but the air is heavy, as if New Orleans holds a secret. I reach the park, shoes squelching on stone paths, breath misting in the cool air. She stands under an ancient oak, blonde hair tied high, black coat, eyes sharp as knives. You're Elise, she says, voice calm but loaded, like a storm waiting to break. I nod, unable to meet her gaze, feeling like a caught child. I'm sorry, I whisper, voice trembling. I didn't know he had a family. She laughs, a brittle sound like shattering glass. Don't lie, Elise, she says, stepping closer, eyes piercing. I've been watching Marcus for months. I saw you at the bar, how you smiled at my husband, how you followed him into that alley. I checked his phone last night, his messages, his words to you. You think you can steal my son's happiness? Her words slice my heart, and I bow my head, unable to argue. I recall Marcus's gaze, his touch, the ring I ignored. I didn't mean to ruin your family, I say, tears spilling, hot like the fire I felt with Marcus. I was wrong. I'll stop. She steps closer, eyes a cold flame, unyielding. You will stop, she says, voice low, sharp, or I'll ensure you lose everything, your job, your reputation, your life. Don't test me, Elise. Her threat is a chilling wind, making me tremble. I nod, tears falling to the ground, like lingering raindrops. I promise, I whisper, voice breaking, then turn away, steps heavy on the path, back at my apartment. I sit on the sofa, the lamp illuminating my weary face. My phone buzzes, another message from Marcus. Elise, I told her, I want to be with you. My heart races, part of me wanting to believe, but I know it's a lie to pull me back. I open my contacts, finger hovering over his name, then block him. But a soft knock sounds at the door, like a sudden drum in a sad song. I start, heart pounding, approaching the door, but hesitating. Who's there? I call, voice shaking, but only Rain answers. I crack the door, peering into the dark hallway, finding only a small, rain-soaked note on the floor. I pick it up, unfolding it, my heart stopping at the handwritten words. Don't think this is over. Rain falls heavily outside, like hammers striking the wall of guilt I can't dismantle. The next morning, I stand on my apartment balcony, watching New Orleans wake under golden sunlight. The city remains beautiful, with jazz echoing, the scent of coffee and beignets on the breeze, but I'm no longer the woman who stepped into that studio. I, Elise, let Marcus's fire consume me, but now I must rebuild from the ashes, returning to work, to David, to myself. Memories of him flicker, like a stray note, but I've learned to push them away, letting new light guide me. Morning sun filters through oak branches outside my balcony, painting shimmering streaks on the wooden floor. The scent of jasmine from a small potted plant blends with fresh coffee, softening the air, a reminder that life goes on. I wear a white blouse, black slacks, hair tied high, ready for work at the restaurant. In the mirror, I see a different Elise, eyes still tinged with sorrow, but a new resolve, like a small flame smoldering, refusing to fade. At the restaurant, glasses clink, herbs and red wine scents waft from the kitchen. Elise, table 7 needs more wine. A server calls, and I nod, moving swiftly, checking reservations. Work sweeps me into its familiar rhythm, arranging menus, chatting with guests, ensuring perfection. An elderly patron, silver-haired, smiles. You always brighten this place, Elise. I smile back, warmth spreading, like sunlight through clouds. But then, amid the jazz from the speakers, a saxophone melody hums, smooth and soulful, like Marcus's whisper. I pause, gripping a wine tray, his image rising, blazing eyes, fingers tracing my body, his low moan as we merged. My heart races, a stray note, but I breathe deeply, banishing the vision. No, Elise, I murmur. You're stronger than that. I resume work, my smile returning, like a new wall shielding me from the past. That evening, I return home early, cooking a simple dinner, roast beef, salad, a bottle of wine. David arrives late, as usual, his suit rumpled, eyes weary from a long day. Smells amazing, he says, eyes lighting up at the table. I smile, setting a plate before him. Just wanted to do something for us, I say softly. He takes my hand, a rare touch, and I feel a faint warmth, a small light in our cold marriage. We dine, talking of small things, his work, a difficult restaurant guest, weekend plans. For the first time in months, I see David smile, a genuine smile, reminding me why I once loved him. But as he talks about a case, a saxophone hums in my mind, an uninvited memory. I see Marcus, the red rug, golden light, the fire blazing in the studio. I grip my wine glass, nails digging into my palm, then breathe deeply, pushing it away. You okay? David asks, eyes concerned. Fine, I reply, smiling. Just tired. After dinner, I wash dishes, David beside me, drying plates, a simple but precious moment. I've missed nights like this, he says, voice low. Me too, I reply, looking at him, feeling the wall between us crack, if only slightly. I don't speak of Marcus, that night, the mysterious note. I bury them deep, a secret locked behind the wall of guilt. In the days that follow, I settle into routine, work, caring for David, rediscovering myself. One morning, a partner calls, offering me a chance to design interiors for a new French Quarter bar. You've got talent, Elise, he says. Don't waste it. I smile, agreeing, and start sketching, lines vibrant as my reviving life. But one evening, passing through the French Quarter, a saxophone's wail from a small bar stops me. I stand outside, neon light on my face, heart racing. I see Marcus in my mind, saxophone on shoulder, eyes deep. Part of me wants to enter, hear him play, touch that fire again. But I turn away, steps firm, pushing the memory aside. That's not me anymore, I whisper, the breeze carrying jasmine and coffee, a confirmation. I return home, David reading on the sofa, lamplight on his face. I sit beside him, resting my head on his shoulder, feeling peace, like a boat finding harbor. My phone buzzes, a message from the partner. Amazing sketches. Elise, we start next week. I smile, replying, I'm ready. Outside, New Orleans glows under its lights, jazz faint, but I no longer fear stray notes. I've found my own light, though somewhere, a small ember smolders, waiting to fade. Elise's story is a journey from temptation to rebirth. What's next for her? Share your thoughts in the comments, hit like, and subscribe for more emotional stories. Thanks for joining me. Beneath the ancient oak canopy of Savannah, I stood in the historic villa, the flickering candlelight reflecting off my form-fitting red silk dress. I am Clara, 36 years old, an interior designer, but my heart has withered in the cold marriage with my husband. Ethan. Silent evenings, indifferent embraces, and intimacy that felt like a mere obligation left me yearning for a new flame. Tonight, at a party in our home, the gazes of James and Liam, Ethan's two best friends, met mine, like two sparks ready to ignite every boundary. Please hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to join me on this whirlwind of emotions. Our villa sits on the outskirts of Savannah, its stone walls covered in moss, tall windows glowing with the soft candlelight on the dining table. The scent of magnolia flowers wafted in from the garden, mingling with the rich aroma of red wine. I wore a red silk dress with a deep V-neck, my fiery red hair cascading over my shoulders, a few strands clinging to my neck from the humid Georgia summer heat. Guests laughed and chatted, the clinking of glasses filling the air, but I felt only emptiness. Ethan stood in the corner of the room, dressed in a white shirt, his eyes glued to his phone as always, oblivious to me. I held a glass of wine, taking a sip, the bitterness sliding down my throat, a reminder of our marriage, 5 years together. But Ethan had become a stranger. Our moments of intimacy were mere obligations, devoid of emotion, devoid of passion. He no longer had the power to make me tremble, to ignite the fire within me. I sighed, gazing out at the garden where moonlight filtered through the oak leaves, casting dancing shadows, mirroring the desires I dared not voice. Then I felt the gazes, not one, but two. James stood near the window, his blonde hair glowing under the candlelight, his gray eyes watching me with curiosity, like a wolf stalking its prey. He wore a black shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing his toned arms. Liam stood across the room, his dark hair sleek, his deep brown eyes sharp yet filled with desire. He wore a gray suit, his muscles evident beneath the fabric, like a storm waiting to break free. They were Ethan's best friends, but the looks they gave me were not those of friendship. They were fire, and I, like a moth, was drawn in. I walked to the dining table, pretending to adjust the flower arrangement, but my heart pounded like the drums of an ancient melody. James approached, the scent of his woody cologne making me dizzy. "Clara, you look more beautiful than ever," he said, his voice low, like a whisper in the night. I smiled faintly, trying to maintain my composure. Thank you, James. You're quite captivating yourself, I replied, my eyes gliding over him, sensing the danger in every word. Liam appeared beside me, a glass of wine in hand, his gaze unwavering. Ethan is a lucky man, he said, his voice cold but laced with meaning. But sometimes, people don't appreciate what they have. His words cut like a knife, and I knew they both saw the loneliness in my eyes. Before leaving, James whispered, "Give me your number, Clara, for easier contact." I hesitated, but his gaze left me unable to refuse. I gave him my number, and that very night, a group chat was created. Just me, James, and Liam. The first message came from James. "Clara, I can't forget your eyes tonight. They were like a flame." Liam followed immediately. "You're as beautiful as a storm, Clara. I want to see you unleash." My heart raced, feeling as though I stood on the edge of an abyss, and I had no desire to run away. The sound of message notifications, the wind whistling through the window, the sound of water running in the bathroom, crickets chirping. The days following the party, Savannah basked in golden sunlight, but my heart was swept away by the fiery messages from James and Liam. I, Clara, had grown tired of the silent evenings with Ethan, the emotionless intimacy, and the emptiness in my heart. Our group chat became a secret world, where seductive whispers, provocative images, and even daring videos made me tremble, like a flame blazing in the dark night. I knew I was walking a dangerous line, but I couldn't stop, and I didn't want to stop. The late afternoon sun streamed through my office window, reflecting off my drafting table where interior designs lay untouched. I wore a thin white dress, my red hair tied up high, but my mind was elsewhere. My phone buzzed incessantly, each message from the group chat making my heart race like the drums of an ancient melody. James texted, "Clara, I imagine you in that villa that night, without a stitch of clothing, like a living flame." Liam followed immediately. "You're as beautiful as a storm, Clara. I want to see you unleash, with nothing to hide." I bit my lip, my breathing quickening, feeling like a flower blooming in the midst of a tempest. My fingers trembled on the screen as I replied, "You're making me burn." James sent a photo, his body under dim lighting, bare, his muscles chiseled like a living statue, stealing my breath. Liam followed with an image of himself under the shower, water streaming down his body like an erupting volcano, hot and intense. I texted back, "You two are truly dangerous." I glanced around the office, ensuring no one saw, then snapped a photo, the light streaming through my white dress, highlighting my curves like a rising wave under moonlight. I sent it, feeling as though I had just thrown myself into a bottomless abyss, my heart pounding, but I couldn't stop. That night, I returned to the villa, moonlight filtering through the oak canopy, casting dancing shadows on the stone walls. Ethan sat on the sofa, his eyes glued to his laptop as always, oblivious to me. I wore a thin emerald silk robe, my red hair cascading over my shoulders, a few strands clinging to my neck from Savannah's humidity. I sat across from him, holding my phone, the group chat lighting up again. James texted, "Clara, I want to see you right now, like a flame that can't be extinguished." Liam, "Show us, Clara, without hiding, like a free wave." I smiled faintly, a smile both longing and guilty, my fingers gliding over the screen as I replied, You won't be disappointed. Ethan looked up, his eyes glancing over me. What's making you so happy, Clara? His voice was flat, without suspicion, but I startled, my heart racing. Nothing, I replied, trying to keep my tone steady, smiling faintly. Just a message from a client. He nodded, returning to his laptop, unaware of my quickened breathing. I continued texting. Wait a moment. I stood up, heading to the bathroom, where the golden-orange light from the lamp illuminated the tiled walls, steam rising from the shower like a misty veil. I slipped off my robe, letting it slide to the floor, my body like a living painting under the dim light, a flame blazing in the night. I recorded a short video, water streaming down my skin, accentuating every curve, like a rising wave. I sent it, my heart pounding, feeling as though I had just opened a door that couldn't be closed. James texted back immediately. Clara, you're driving me insane. Liam. I want to rush there right now. Clara, to feel your fire. All night, we texted back and forth, each word a spark, each image a storm. James sent a photo of himself lying on his bed, the light illuminating his body, like a predator waiting to pounce. Liam sent an image of himself standing by a window, moonlight glowing on his skin, like a volcano about to erupt. I lay in bed, moonlight streaming through my window, smiling faintly, replying, "You're keeping me awake." The messages continued until morning, each word pulling me deeper into the abyss, and I knew I needed to see them, to turn these whispers into reality. The next day, I decided to invite them over for dinner on Friday. Ethan, I'm inviting James and Liam for dinner on Friday, okay? I said, my voice calm, but inside, a wave surged. Ethan nodded, unsuspecting. Sounds good. You arrange it. I smiled, looking out at the garden, sunlight warming my face, but inside me was a storm, ready to erupt. The clinking of wine glasses, lively laughter, the sound of water running in the bathroom, heavy breathing. Tonight, our historic villa in Savannah glowed brightly, the scent of grilled meat and magnolia flowers filling the air. Clara, stood in the kitchen, my black dress hugging my body, preparing dinner, but my mind was consumed by James and Liam. They arrived, their gazes full of intent, and I knew tonight would be more than just a meal. Under the table, winks, light kicks, and every glass of red wine poured for Ethan were part of a plan he was completely unaware of. When Ethan became drunk, the three of us began to fall into an abyss, a storm of passion we couldn't resist. The villa glowed under the chandelier, golden orange light reflecting off the moss-covered stone walls, creating a warm yet mysterious atmosphere. I wore a tight black dress with a deep V-neck, accentuating my curves, my fiery red hair cascading over my shoulders, a few strands clinging to my neck from the humid Georgia summer heat. The aroma of grilled beef and mashed potatoes wafted from the kitchen, blending with the scent of magnolia from the garden, creating an intimate yet seductive space. Ethan sat at the head of the table, wearing a white shirt, his face beaming. I just signed a big contract today. Let's raise a toast to celebrate. He laughed heartily, unaware that I was exchanging secret signals with his two friends. James sat across from me, his blonde hair glowing under the light, his gray eyes watching me like a wolf stalking its prey. Liam sat beside me, his dark hair sleek, his deep brown eyes sharp yet filled with desire. Dinner was lively, laughter echoing, glasses clinking, but under the table, I felt a light touch from James's foot, like a spark igniting dry grass. I winked at him, smiling faintly, then turned to Liam, my foot brushing his thigh, making him smirk, his gaze burning. Ethan remained oblivious, raising his glass. "Drink more. I'm so happy today." James smiled, refilling Ethan's glass. "Of course, my friend." Liam nodded. "We have to celebrate fully." I watched them, my heart pounding, feeling a storm approaching. Ethan drank glass after glass, his face flushed, laughing endlessly, but his voice began to slur. "You guys are great," he mumbled, then slumped onto the table, completely drunk. James stood, his gaze meeting mine with intent. "Let us take Ethan to his room." Liam nodded, and they carried Ethan upstairs, leaving me in the dining room, my breathing heavy, like a flame about to ignite. I heard the bedroom door close. Then James and Liam returned, their gazes like two waves ready to sweep me away. "Clara," James whispered, stepping closer, his hand brushing my waist. "It's our time now." Liam stood behind me, his breath hot on my neck. "Let us take you into the storm." I led them to the large bathroom, where golden orange light illuminated the tiled walls, steam rising from the shower like a misty veil. I slipped off my dress, letting it fall to the floor. My body like a living painting under the light, a flame blazing in the night. James and Liam shed their shirts, their bodies like two sculptures, their muscles chiseled, stealing my breath. Water poured down, hot, like a summer rain. James stood in front of me, his hands lathering soap on my shoulders, each touch like a spark, making me tremble. Liam stood behind me, his hands gliding down my back, soaping me like a rising wave. I held the soap, my hands rubbing James' chest, feeling his firm muscles, then sliding down his hips, each motion like a note in a melody, igniting the fire within me. I turned to Liam, my hands rubbing his back, feeling his hot skin, like a volcano about to erupt. The three of us caressed each other, steam enveloping us like a veil of passion, each touch melting me. Heavy breathing, the rustle of silk fabric, the crackling of candles, the scent of vanilla and sandalwood wafting through the air. In the dimly lit living room of our Savannah villa, the flickering glow of scented candles cast dancing shadows, like unspoken desires. Clara, had just emerged from the steamy heat of the bathroom with James and Liam, two flames that had pulled me into a deep abyss of passion. Under the golden orange light, we surrendered to an ancient dance where all boundaries dissolved, leaving only a blazing fire, entwined in every touch, every breath, every heartbeat. The living room was enveloped in the soft glow of scented candles, the aroma of vanilla and sandalwood wafting through the air, an invitation dripping with temptation. I stood between James and Liam, my emerald silk bathrobe slipping to the floor, revealing my body like a living painting, nothing left to hide, a flame burning in the night. James stepped forward, his gray eyes like a wolf on the hunt, his hands gliding over my shoulders, each touch a spark. Liam stood behind me, his hands caressing my waist, his hot breath on my neck like a rising wave. The three of us merged, lips meeting lips, like flames licking at each other, hot and intense. I reclined on the sofa, the candlelight illuminating my skin, accentuating every curve, like a wave under moonlight. James knelt on the floor before me, his gaze level with my core, his eyes burning, like a traveler lost in a desert, yearning for water. He leaned in, his breath hot, like a summer breeze, touching me, making me tremble, like a flower blooming in a storm. Liam sat beside me, his lips claiming mine, a deep and fierce kiss, like a wave sweeping me away. His hands glided over my chest, each touch a note in a melody, igniting the fire within me. My hands caressed Liam's chest, feeling his firm muscles, like a volcano about to erupt, while my other hand gripped James' hair, feeling him set me ablaze from below, like an unquenchable flame. Liam stood, my gaze meeting his, like a starving soul beholding a precious gift. I leaned in, feeling his heat, like a flame that never cools, hot and powerful, like a sweet gift that never melts. I immersed myself in the sensation, like an artist savoring a masterpiece, each rhythm making me dizzy. Liam groaned, his hands gripping my hair, guiding me in a fierce dance, like a wave sliding up and down a shore, hot and irresistible. Then James and Liam switched positions, James' voice deep and warm. "Clara, kneel, let us take you further." I knelt, the candlelight illuminating my body like a living statue. Liam moved behind me, his breath hot, like a breeze, touching me, like an explorer seeking hidden treasure, making me tremble, like a parched beach welcoming rain. James stood before me, my gaze meeting his, like another flame, powerful and captivating, like a sweet gift that never melts, growing more intense with each taste. I immersed myself in the sensation, like a starving soul finding life, each rhythm melting me, like an uncontrollable blaze. The three of us merged, each touch, each breath, like an ancient symphony, where all boundaries dissolved. I felt the fire within me rise, like a volcano, the pressure erupting, sweeping us into an irresistible storm, leaving only our heavy breaths mingling in the dim candlelight. Heavy breathing, the creak of the sofa, the crackling of candles, the scent of vanilla and sandalwood wafting through the air. After the steamy prelude, I, Clara, felt the fire within me blaze fiercely, my body taut, burning, like a volcano ready to erupt. James and Liam, two fierce waves, enveloped me in the dim glow of the scented candles, the aroma of vanilla and sandalwood wafting through the air, an invitation dripping with temptation. We had crossed every boundary, surrendering to an ancient dance where every touch, every heartbeat, merged into an irresistible storm. Under the golden orange light, I felt each breath, each movement, like a blazing fire, leading us into the abyss of passion. I knelt on the sofa, the candlelight illuminating my skin, accentuating every curve, a living painting, wet and taut, like a flower blooming in a storm. James moved behind me, my hips aligning with his waist, his body burning, like a volcano, his breath hot on my back, like a summer breeze. He merged with me, each rhythm gentle, then stronger, like waves crashing against rocks, each movement making me tremble, like a flame fanned by the wind. "Clara," he whispered, his voice deep and warm. "You make me unable to stop." I moaned, my voice trembling. "More, James, it feels so good," feeling as though my body were melting, like a parched beach welcoming a heavy rain. Liam stood before me, his gaze burning, like a volcano about to erupt, his body taut, like a living statue under the candlelight. My eyes were level with his waist, my hands reaching for him, gripping tightly, moving up and down, like a blacksmith hammering hot steel, each rhythm making him breathe heavily, like a wave sliding up and down a shore. "Clara, you're incredible," Liam groaned, his voice filled with desire. "Your skill drives me wild." I leaned in, feeling his heat, like a flame that never cools, wet and intense, like a sweet gift that never melts. I immersed myself in the sensation, my lips and hot breath touching him, like an artist savoring a masterpiece, cleansing every trace of the blazing fire, each rhythm making him groan. We're in ecstasy, Clara. You're driving us insane. Then Liam guided me to lie back on the sofa, the candlelight illuminating my body, accentuating every curve, like a wave rising high under moonlight. He merged with me, each movement deep and powerful, like a colossal wave, sweeping me into a whirlwind I couldn't resist, touching the deepest parts of me, like an explorer discovering hidden treasure. Clara, does it feel good? Liam whispered, his voice filled with passion. We'll give you the most incredible experiences. I moaned, my voice breaking. It feels so good. More, please. You're both amazing. Feeling as though my body were erupting, like a volcano, the pressure rising uncontrollably. James moved above me, kneeling on the sofa, my gaze meeting his core, like another flame, powerful and captivating, like a sweet gift that never melts, hot and firm. I immersed myself in the sensation, my lips touching him, like a starving soul savoring a precious gift, each rhythm making him groan. Clara, you're driving me insane. Your skill is incredible. One hand guided him, setting the rhythm, while the other caressed myself, like an artist creating, touching my most sensitive places, making me moan. Oh God, I can't take it. I'm going to lose myself. It felt as though I were being swept into a storm, each heartbeat, each touch, melting me, like a beach battered by waves, hot and wet. The three of us merged, each movement, each breath, like an ancient symphony where all boundaries dissolved. James and Liam, like two waves, swept me into a whirlwind, each rhythm melting me, like an uncontrollable blaze. Clara, you make us unable to stop. James panted, his voice filled with passion. Liam groaned. We'll show you what true ecstasy is. I moaned, my voice breaking. You both, it feels so good. Don't stop. Feeling as though my body were erupting, like a volcano, the pressure surging, sweeping us into an irresistible storm. Our heavy breaths mingled with the scent of vanilla and sandalwood, like a fierce melody, pulling us deeper into the abyss of passion. Heavy breathing, the creak of the sofa, the crackling of candles, the scent of vanilla and sandalwood wafting through the air, moans echoing in the space. In the dim glow of the scented candles, I, Clara, was completely swept into a whirlwind of passion with James and Liam. My body felt like a volcano, the pressure rising, ready to erupt, merging with two fierce waves, nothing left to hide, only heartbeats, touches, and moans blending in a space filled with temptation. The aroma of vanilla and sandalwood wafted through the air, like a seductive melody, pulling us into the climax where all boundaries dissolved, leaving only a blazing fire, erupting uncontrollably. Under the golden orange light, I felt each breath, each movement, like a flame licking at every sense, leading us into the abyss of passion. The three of us were lost in an ancient symphony, each rhythm, each breath, like three waves crashing together, creating a fierce whirlwind. I felt the pressure within me surge, like a volcano about to erupt, my body taut, burning, like a flower blooming in a storm. James and Liam, like two flames, surrounded me, their breaths heavy, their bodies taut, like two volcanoes reaching their peak. Clara, James whispered, his voice thick with desire. Let us give you our most precious essence on your beautiful and seductive face. Liam followed, his voice trembling like a flame about to burst. You'll feel our fierce fire. Clara, are you ready? I sat up on the sofa, the candlelight illuminating my face, highlighting my sharp green eyes, my full red lips, and my fiery red hair, like a living flame. I want to feel you. Let me immerse myself in that fire, I whispered, my voice trembling, filled with longing, like a soul lost in a desert finding water. James and Liam stood beside me, their gazes burning, their faces flushed, like volcanoes ready to erupt. Clara, you're too hot, James groaned, his voice deep and warm. We can't hold back anymore. Liam panted. You're melting us. Clara, receive our fire. They erupted like two towering waves, leaving precious pearls, hot and sticky, like molten beeswax, falling onto my face, like a summer rain, warm and intense. I tilted my face up, receiving it, feeling their heat, like a fiery rain, making me tremble, like a flower blooming under scorching sunlight. The three of us moaned in unison, our sounds blending. Mmm, mmm, echoing in the dim space, like a pledge of passion. Clara, you're driving me insane, James panted, his voice full of emotion. This moment is too intense, Liam groaned. We're in ecstasy. Clara, you're incredible. Your face is like a painting. I smiled faintly, feeling the warmth on my face, like pearls shimmering under the candlelight, making me dizzy, like an artist completing a masterpiece. You've melted me. I've never felt a fire this fierce, I whispered, my voice trembling, filled with satisfaction. I leaned in, reaching for James, then Liam, like a starving soul savoring two sweet gifts, hot and never melting, like two unquenchable flames. My lips glided over them, like someone savoring a precious gift, each rhythm immersing me, like a soul lost in a desert finding water. Clara, you're melting me again, James groaned, his voice filled with desire. Your lips are as hot as a flame, Liam panted. You're so seductive. We'll never forget this feeling, Clara. The three of us sat on the sofa, our breaths still heavy, the candlelight illuminating my face, highlighting the precious pearls, like shimmering pearls under the golden orange light. The scent of vanilla and sandalwood still lingered, a reminder of the storm that had just passed, pulling us deeper into the abyss of passion. Clara, did you like it? Liam asked, his voice deep and warm, his gaze still burning. I've never felt a fire this fierce, I replied, my voice full of emotion. You've made it unforgettable. James smiled, caressing my hair. We feel the same. Clara, you're like a flame, burning through all our boundaries. The space grew quiet again. Only the crackling of the candles remained, the golden orange light illuminating our bodies, like living statues bearing the memory of a passionate storm. I closed my eyes, feeling their warmth, like a flame still smoldering, leaving me in a state of fulfillment, yet haunted, like a dream I couldn't wake from. The sound of water running in the bathroom, soft footsteps, morning birds chirping, the bustling streets of Savannah, gentle piano music. After the storm of passion, I, Clara, felt my body like a flame that had burned fiercely, now reduced to smoldering embers. In the dim candlelight of the living room, James and Liam joined me for one final moment before they left, leaving me with a whirlwind of thoughts. Savannah glowed under the moonlight, but my heart was filled with mixed emotions, desire, guilt, and resolve. I realized I needed to move forward, leaving the storm behind and rediscover the light with Ethan, my husband, who wasn't so bad after all. The candles in the living room still burned, the scent of vanilla and sandalwood lingering, a reminder of the storm that had passed. James, Liam, and I stood, our bodies weary but still warm from passion. "We should shower," I said, my voice hoarse, like a flame about to die out. They nodded, their gazes still fiery but now softened, like a wave after a storm. We stepped into the large bathroom, where golden orange light illuminated the tiled walls, steam rising from the shower like a misty veil. Water poured down, hot, like a summer rain, washing away the traces of the night, but unable to erase the memories. James and Liam stood on either side of me, water streaming down their bodies, like two living statues, but no one spoke, as if we all knew this was the final moment. I closed my eyes, letting the water run over my face, feeling like a flame cooling down. After the shower, James and Liam dressed, their gazes lingering on me, filled with emotion, but no one mentioned what had happened. "Clara, thank you for an unforgettable night," James said, his voice deep and warm, smiling faintly. Liam nodded. "We'll never forget it, Clara, but perhaps this is enough." I smiled, nodding. "Yes, this is enough." They left, their footsteps echoing on the wooden floor, then fading behind the door, leaving me in the quiet villa, moonlight filtering through the oak canopy, like haunting whispers. I went to bed, but couldn't sleep. I lay there, moonlight illuminating my face, my fiery red hair tangled on the pillow, my green eyes staring at the ceiling. Memories of that night flooded back, the candlelight, James and Liam's breaths, the fire within me, and the storm of passion that had swept us away. I felt a part of me still yearning, but another part was filled with guilt. What have I done? I asked myself, my voice trembling in my mind. I thought of Ethan, my husband sleeping soundly in the next room, the man I had once grown tired of. But now I realized he wasn't so bad. He might be reserved, but he always loved me, always tried for our family. I decided that night was just an experience, a flame that had burned like never before, and that was enough. I needed to move forward, mend my relationship with Ethan, and rediscover the happiness I had lost. In the days that followed, I poured my heart into my work. My office in downtown Savannah glowed under the sunlight, the scent of magnolia wafting through the window, a reminder of renewal. I wore a simple white dress, my hair tied up high, focusing on my interior designs, a way to forget those unworthy desires. Ethan grew closer. We started talking more, dining together, trying to rekindle the flame in our marriage. "Clara, would you like to go on a trip somewhere?" he asked one evening, his eyes full of hope. I smiled, nodding. "I'd love to, Ethan. We need time together." The four of us, me, Ethan, James, and Liam, still met up, still checked in, and still hung out, like normal friends. One afternoon, we had coffee at a small cafe on a Savannah street, laughter ringing out, sunlight filtering through the oak canopy, casting dancing shadows. James and Liam remained polite, their gazes passing over me, but the fire was gone, as if that night had been a dream. No one mentioned what had happened, like an unspoken agreement, and I knew that was for the best. I held Ethan's hand, feeling his warmth, like a small but steady flame, enough to warm my heart. Clara's story is a journey from boredom to passion, but also one of cost and awakening. Which path did she choose? What do you think of Clara's decision? Share your thoughts in the comments, hit like, and subscribe to not miss more emotional stories like this.